The base sits in the Syrian desert like a fist, Al-Tanf. Coordinates that appear on no public map but exist in every serious intelligence database on the planet. It is 2024, and the Americans who live here have grown comfortable in the way that only the untouchable can afford to be. Inside the operations center, the screens glow blue. The Centurion C-RAM, counter-rocket, artillery, and mortar, stands outside in the dark, a white cylinder of rotating death mounted on an M10-087 chassis. Its M61A1 Gatling barrel capable of spitting 4,500 rounds per minute at anything foolish enough to enter its envelope. The Aegis integrated shore batteries complete the perimeter. Together, they represent approximately $800 million of American engineering. The men who operate them do not say they are invincible. They simply behave as though the question has already been answered. The intelligence briefing that morning had flagged Iranian proxy drone activity in the region. The word swarm appeared once in a subordinate clause. A colonel reviewed it, initialed the page, and moved on. 80 simultaneous drone launches, his mind processed and discarded. 80. The logistics alone made it implausible. The coordination bandwidth required exceeded what any non-state actor in the theater had demonstrated. He had the data. He trusted the data. This is what the mathematics of arrogance looks like before it meets the mathematics of death. Ground Zero Stories brings you the tactical truth the Pentagon buries in classified annexes. If you want the real briefing, not the press release, subscribe now. This is not commentary. This is the after-action report they will never publish. The sound arrives before the radar acknowledges anything is wrong. It is not the shriek of an incoming missile. It is not the sharp crack of artillery. It is something closer to an agricultural noise. The collective drone of 80 small engines running at low RPM across a wide front. A Sound One acoustic analyst would later describe in his report as a lawnmower convention moving at 180 kilometers per hour. The Shahed 136, Iranian designed, delta-winged, loitering. Each one carrying a warhead packed with copper-jacketed ball bearings and enough high explosive to convert a parked aircraft into approximately 40,000 pieces of non-functional metal. The engine is the key to understanding why the warning came so late. The Shahed 136 runs on a Limbach L550E, a German-designed four-cylinder piston engine originally built for small civilian aircraft, now adapted for one-way missions. It produces 55 horsepower and operates at low altitude, often below 150 meters above ground level. Traditional long-range air defense radar is optimized for high-altitude, high-speed targets, fast jets, ballistic trajectories, cruise missiles moving at transonic speeds. The Limbach's acoustic and radar signature sits in a frequency band that those systems were not designed to prioritize. At low altitude, ground clutter, terrain, vegetation, infrastructure masks the return signal further. The swarm does not jam American radar. It simply does not look like anything American radar was built to find. 80 of these engines, spread across a 12-kilometer front, create a low-frequency vibration that acoustic sensors register before the radar resolves a coherent picture. By the time the automated alert system upgrades its threat classification from ambient noise anomaly to multiple inbound contacts, the swarm is already inside the outer engagement envelope. The screens in the operations center go from blue to red in under 4 seconds. The C-RAM opens fire. This moment, this specific moment, is what failure sounds like when it arrives dressed as capability. The M61A1 Vulcan rotary cannon is a masterpiece of mid-20th century engineering. It can fire 4,500 rounds per minute. It uses proximity-fused 20mm shells that detonate near their targets, scattering fragments through the airspace in a cone of destruction. Against a single incoming mortar round, against a slow rocket, it performs as advertised. The engineers who built it were not wrong. They were simply solving a different problem. The problem in front of the C-RAM now is this: 80 vectors incoming simultaneously at varying altitudes between 80 and 200 meters, spread across an engagement zone wider than the system's optimal tracking arc. The targeting computer must prioritize. It must choose which threats to engage first, sequence its firing solutions, and manage what engineers call the thermal duty cycle, the rate at which the barrel assembly can sustain continuous fire before the metal begins to fail. The M61A1's barrels are built to handle sustained bursts. They are not built to handle sustained bursts against 80 simultaneous targets over an extended engagement window without rotation and cooling protocols. As the system fires and continues to fire, The barrel temperature climbs past operational parameters. The metal does not melt dramatically the way a film would show it. It degrades, tolerance margins collapse, round dispersion increases. The firing solution that was accurate at the start of the engagement is no longer accurate 4 minutes later. The system does not fail catastrophically. It fails incrementally, which is worse, because it continues to report that it is functioning while its effectiveness degrades below the threshold required to stop what is coming. The mathematics are not complicated. 4,500 rounds per minute divided across 80 incoming vectors, factoring in tracking transition time between targets, thermal degradation of barrel accuracy, and the spread geometry of the swarm, produces a probability of intercept per unit that falls well below the figure that appears in the system's official performance documentation. The CRAM does not run out of bullets, it runs out of physics. In the back corner of the operations center, 4 men watch this process with an expression that American personnel in the room will later describe, separately and without coordination, using the same word, calm. They are Ukrainian. Their presence at Al-Tanf is not publicly acknowledged by any government. They arrived 6 weeks earlier under a memorandum of understanding that does not appear in any congressional briefing. They are here because someone in the chain of command, someone with enough authority and enough honesty to act on that authority, looked at the data coming out of Kiev and understood that the United States military had not yet fought this war. Ukraine had. Since 2022, Ukrainian air defense crews have faced Shahed 136 swarms over their capital, their power infrastructure, their logistics corridors. They have lost equipment, they have lost people. They have developed, through necessity rather than doctrine, a body of operational knowledge that does not exist in any American field manual, because no American field manual has been written by someone who spent 2 years watching Iranian drones dismantle a city. When the CRAM begins to choke, the senior Ukrainian advisor moves to a terminal that is not connected to the base's primary defense network. He opens a commercial tablet, a modified Android device running an application that was developed by a Ukrainian technology cooperative in Dnipro, using crowd-funded hardware and acoustic sensor arrays originally designed for wildlife monitoring. The application analyzes the acoustic signature of incoming drone engines in real time, maps their approximate positions using triangulation from multiple sensor nodes placed around the perimeter, and displays the result as a geometric overlay on a topographic map. It costs in total approximately $12,000 to deploy. The American commander looks at the tablet screen. He looks at his own systems, which are still attempting to resolve a coherent radar picture of 80 low-altitude contacts against significant ground clutter. He looks back at the tablet. He issues the order to integrate the Ukrainian targeting data into the manual engagement protocol. There is no version of this moment that is comfortable to describe. It is the most expensive military installation in the Syrian theater, staffed by personnel trained at institutions that collectively represent over a century of accumulated defense expertise, accepting targeting coordinates from a commercial tablet running software built by civilians in a besieged city. The pride required to make a different choice is a luxury that the incoming swarm does not permit. The Ukrainians do not gloat. They are already working the next firing solution. 17 Shahed 136 units reach their targets. The explosions are not impressive. This is the detail that every subsequent account struggles to convey to an audience conditioned by cinema, where destruction arrives in orange fireballs and dramatic shockwaves. The Shahed 136's warhead does not explode outward in a sphere of cinematic fire. It detonates in a specifically engineered pattern designed to maximize material penetration. The copper-jacketed ball bearings, hundreds of them, disperse at velocities sufficient to penetrate aircraft skin, hydraulic lines, fuel bladders, and personnel with equivalent indifference. 2 F-15Es are destroyed, not damaged. Destroyed, meaning the airframes are reduced to components that cannot be reassembled into functional aircraft. The fuel bladders rupture and burn, but the fire is secondary to the mechanical damage. The structural integrity of the aircraft is gone before the flames arrive. What remains on the flight line is evidence of a process, not the result of an explosion. Engineers will later describe the damage pattern as kinetic shredding. The term is accurate and carries no drama whatsoever. This is precisely the point. The economics of this exchange deserve their own accounting. Each Shahed 136 costs its manufacturer approximately $20,000. The United States military's response to the swarm, Patriot interceptor missiles, CRAM ammunition, operational costs for the engagement window, is estimated in post-action financial analysis at over $31 million for one night, against one attack. That destroyed 2 aircraft valued at $67 million each. The Patriot interceptor missile costs $2 million per round. It was designed to destroy ballistic missiles and high-performance aircraft. Using it against a $20,000 drone is not a tactical decision. It is an economic sentence. Repeated at scale, across a sustained campaign, it is a sentence that reads as follows. The attacker spends $20,000 to force the defender to spend $2 million, and the defender has a finite budget while the attacker has a production line. This is not a new concept in military theory. The ancient formulation involves shields and spears and the relative cost of each. The modern formulation involves microcontrollers, delta wings, and the industrial capacity of a nation that has spent 40 years building a parallel defense economy specifically designed to operate outside the procurement systems that the United States uses to maintain its advantages. The math does not care about doctrine. The math does not care about budget allocations or acquisition cycles or congressional authorization. The math simply continues to operate. What remains unanswered is, in some ways, more significant than what the after-action report confirms. The swarm's launch point has not been definitively established. Satellite surveillance of the region during the relevant window recorded no anomalous vehicle concentrations, no launch signatures, no assembly activity at any known proxy position. 80 Shahed 136 units require transport, assembly, fueling, and launch coordination. This is not a process that is easy to conceal. The fact that it was concealed from systems that cost more than some nations' annual defense budgets suggests either a failure of surveillance coverage that has not been acknowledged or a dispersal and coordination methodology that has not yet been characterized. The second unanswered question is geometric. The swarm's attack vector showed a pattern of altitude variation and course adjustment during the terminal phase of flight that the Ukrainian advisors, upon review, noted did not match the behavioral parameters of any Shahed 136 swarm they had previously encountered over Ukrainian territory. The adjustments were small. They were also consistent, not random electronic noise, but something that appeared to be responsive to the engagement environment. Whether this represents a new guidance package, an autonomous behavioral algorithm operating at the swarm level, or something that does not yet have a name in any intelligence community's taxonomy, no official assessment has been released. Both questions remain open. In operational terms, an open question about a weapons system that just destroyed 2 aircraft worth over $100 million combined is not an academic matter. Al-Tanf still stands in the Syrian desert. The screens still glow blue inside the operations center. New aircraft have been rotated in. New ammunition loads have been certified. The Centurion CRAM has been reset and recalibrated. And in the back corner of the operations center, the Ukrainians are still there. Not because any public agreement requires them to be. Because the data from one night in the desert established, with the cold precision that no press release could soften and no budget document could obscure, that the accumulated knowledge of frontline survival that those 4 men carry in their operational memory is not supplementary to American defense capability at Al-Tanf. It is foundational. The United States military did not lose the Cold War. It did not lose the Gulf War. It has not, in the conventional accounting, lost a peer engagement in living memory. What it lost at Al-Tanf on that particular night was something smaller and more fundamental than a battle. It lost the assumption that the most expensive system is the most effective system, the assumption that technological superiority, measured in acquisition cost, translates directly into operational superiority in a contested environment, the assumption that the teacher does not need to learn. The Ukrainians packed their tablets away at 0400 hours and refilled their coffee. There was no ceremony. There was no acknowledgement beyond the operational record. They had done what they came to do. They had shown Americans in real time, in a live engagement, what 2 years of surviving the same weapon teaches you that no simulation can replicate. The era being questioned is not the era of the superpower. It is the era of the superpower that does not believe it needs to pay attention to what is happening to people who cannot afford to stop paying attention. That era ended on a flight line in the Syrian desert, in the smell of burning hydraulic fluid and the flat acoustic signature of 80 lawnmower engines receding into the dark. Has the era of the superpower officially ended? Tell us below. And if you want the briefings that never make the press conference, every engagement, every failure, every lesson the institutions refuse to publish, subscribe to Ground Zero Stories. The front line doesn't wait for the news cycle.